team. Welcome to Inside the Movie Photographer with Jasin Boland. Today, I've got something a little bit different. I've got an interview with me. Recently, I was on the photography show in Europe for Nikon, and Neil and Rishi interviewed me, and we had a lot of fun. It's a bit of a turbo talk, so it's not that long, so you can digest it all in one sitting, so to speak. So let's hook into it, and I hope you enjoy it. A little bit of an insight into me, and here you go. Cheers.
Stage at a virtual stage at the virtual photography show. Up next on the stage, we have, talking about amazing photography, we have Jasin Boland. He has shot some of the most iconic images you would have seen. Everybody's probably seen one of Jason's images, and he's going to talk about it. If there's a major feature film that's happened in the last 15 odd years, Jason's probably photographed the imagery that you've seen from it. And that could be The Matrix, Bourne, Mad Max, James Bond. The list is sort of goes on and on and on. Enough about sort of what he's done. I'm going to let Jason talk about sort of his work in his own words. In the chat, if you want to ask us questions, I'm here. My name's Neil. Rishi, my colleague's here. Talk to us via the chat. Ask questions about cameras, lenses, speed lights, Jason's work. We will try and get back and cover all of the questions as quickly as we can as we go through. So talk to us via the chat and we'll try and get back to you. So I'm going to hand over to you, Jason. Let's have a look at some of your amazing imagery.
Thanks, team. Hey, quickly, and thanks, Neil and Rishi, and thanks for Nikon for having me, and to you guys out there who have taken the time to come and check it out. There you go, team. So this is me in my early days. Now, I came from a newspaper background. I worked for a bundle of papers when I was younger, and this is when I was stationed in Hong Kong on the South China Morning Post, and we're at Alo. Now, the reason why I like to have some photos of my early days is because being a film set photographer is very, very similar. And the way that I shoot is very similar to when I used to shoot news. I treat it like it's a real environment, like it's happening in front of me. I get quite into it on a film set, and the environment, as I said, is very, very real to me. I try and use that from those old days. So as you can see here, this is one of my shots that was the front page of the International Herald Trib. And they used to say in those days that if you had the front page of the International Herald Trib, it meant that you had the best photo in the world that day. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I'll take that one because I was only like 22 or something. But it was pretty crazy. As you can see, I'm right into it. The guy on the right with the mask on pulled out a little penknife and held it at me, and it's like, telling me not to take any photos. So I already had a great one, and this was the first time that the students in Korea had overthrown the riot police. So it was a pretty rad time. In my days at newspapers, I was kicked out of photography school on the first day, actually within minutes. And I just want to talk to you guys about, it's a theme that comes up with me a lot, is success only comes from failure. I've become relatively successful through my career, but I still make mistakes, and we all make mistakes in photography, and it's about pushing on and not letting those get in the way of our development, because every time you press that button, if you go back to that photograph later, you can always do better, or it'll always be different. It's a growth thing, and there's no rules in photography. I don't have a single rule in photography. I just pick up a camera and I throw it around. I follow the action like I'm a cinematographer or a cine camera operator. And for me, and for all of us out there that shoot action, we know when the action is going to start, but don't know what's going to happen from that start point and when it's going to finish. So it's important to follow through. Although I use the Z6 and the Z7 for probably 95% of my work, with the big action stuff, like when I'm working on a Bond film, and with Bond, I don't do main, I only do the stunts, which is really, really cool. And I've done 3 of them now, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I never know when the action is going to finish. And so with the DSLR, I've been using D5 and D6. You can't fill up the buffer with these cameras at all. It gives you that freedom to hose it down. But as I said, the Z system is now a large part of my workflow. This is Matrix, which was probably my first big break. I'd done Dark City before that. But with Matrix, I was a young photographer. Well, not that young. I think I was either 33 in the sequels, or I was 33 in this one. I can't quite remember, to tell you the truth. But for many years, I could have just had the Matrix on my resume. I would have got work. So, you know, and I made my mistakes on that too. It's like if I had an opportunity to go back and do it again, I'd do it very, very differently. And I did to a degree on Ghost in the Shell, because Matrix is loosely based on Ghost in the Shell as well. I don't know if you guys know that, but it was really insane. You know, it was like I was photographing scenes on Ghost in the Shell. It's like, oh my God, I shot this 20 years ago on Matrix. So it was pretty crazy. I like having a chat. I wish I was there with you guys now, because normally at the end of it, I stay around all day and I'll just get to talk to everyone. So this was Smith and Neo duking it out in the rain. And we used to call this Chubby Rain because it was so fat. And we shot this for like 3 or 4 weeks. It was just insane. And this is probably now turned into, I loosely use the word iconic, but it's probably turned into one of my most recognizable images still to this day. And, you know, when I'm doing a special shoot, which is poster shoots, and they send style guides, they still send me my own photographs, which is pretty funny. This one, this brings me to a good point, actually. Neil touched on it at the very beginning, that probably none of you guys have ever heard of me before TPS, but my colleagues and I would quite possibly be the most published photographers on the planet when you think about all the, you know, the big marketing campaigns that the studios do, and they get to every corner of the world. And the films that we work on are translated into, you know, many, many different languages. The stills aren't. You know, I'm really proud to be a part of that filmmaking process. And, you know, I know my friends are as well. I'm the VP of the Society of Motion Picture Still Photographers. And it's actually what we call Draft Week this week, where we have new inductees coming through and we have to select on their images and stuff like that. And it's an exciting time. This was so much fun. Oh my gosh. Hugo Weaving, such a great guy. We had a question last night about the Smith heads. And I said there was, you know, if it wasn't 50, it was 100. But they were all masks. And it was, these guys are all masked up. It wasn't a visual effect, which when you think about it now, they would just do it in visual effects. It wouldn't even bother anyone. So, which is cool. Right now, I put this, I didn't have this in last night, and I should have, because this is an example that I like to show for back catalogue. Now, you guys out there, I don't know whether you're enthusiast, semi-pro, pro, you know, but for the enthusiasts out there, I love you guys. You've got photography for the pure love of it, and I envy that, because my photography is to put food on the table and pay for my kids' school fees and, well, more his hockey tournaments. But I admire what you guys do. Now, this shot, when I first took it, I didn't even like it. I just left it out. Now I look at it and it's got Neo's exit. You got the phone. You've got him in some outer world style going on. And this is more indicative of my style of photography now than what it was then. Before, I was like interested in, you know, just the poster shot tight and images like that. But I've grown into this. So, you know, go back through your back catalogue and take a look at what you've got, because you get surprised quite frequently. And, you know, I do. It's really fun to revisit images, especially now, you know, maybe you've learnt more in post-processing and stuff like that. So it's worth having a look at.
Questions come in.
Yeah, cool.
I know you shot that on film. What do you find the difference between film and digital, given I came from shooting film and we were having the conversation about ISO 64 and sort of, especially with low light, you really couldn't push film, could you, much in low light?
Well, I did. I used to shoot 320J and I used to push it, 2.25 stops, but I'd expose it 2 stops. So digital has revolutionized my world. I shoot on my Z6 and my D5 and D6. I shoot at 6400 ISO all day long, and you wouldn't even know. It was tricky in those days. I used to do some shots that I'd be with film, it'd be so dark, I'd be shooting at, you know, 10th of a second and 15th of a second. And, you know, my life is governed by shutter speed because I mainly shoot on action film. So, you know, to have digital now, you know, as I say, you know, the Nikons can see in the dark like a cat full of carrots. It's revolutionized, the DSLR revolutionized my world. And then the mirrorless has taken that to the next step as well. So, you know, the film days were tricky. And, you know, this was a F4S. whilst there was a great camera, these days I'm also manual focus too, whereas now I'm all fully auto. There's an interesting story to this actually, because this is actually hanging in the Academy of Arts and Sciences as a permanent exhibition. It's Charlize Theron's Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road. And it was at the end of the day, and there was a shot with a camera truck, and I couldn't get on it because it's an edge arm. I'll show you. I think I've got a shot of one further down the road. So I thought, damn it, you know. So I started walking to the swamp to get my car out. I had my 70 to 200 over my shoulder, and I think it was a D5 then? Gosh, it probably was. I looked at it, I was like, oh, there's a little slot there. So I pulled up the camera and I got, 5 or 6 frames off, and this was it. And, it's a good example, and I'll get down to it further, that, the end of the day is quite often when the best stuff happens. And you know what it's like. The first light and the last light's always the best. First light, especially for you landscape guys like Neil, it's like you make an effort to get up. That's where the payoff comes from, Afternoon light, you sit around waiting for it all day, and sometimes you just get complacent and go home. It's not going to pop. So yeah, don't leave the set. Like sometimes I want to, but I don't. Right, so this was my Michelangelo, or this is what the director used to call it anyway. Shall I tell the story about the grading?
Yeah, I think it's a great story.
Okay, so what it is with Mad Max, I get a lot of people that, and this is what I was talking about, the success and failure and what you feel about your own images. There's a lot of people that will criticize you. There's a lot of people that criticize me. But you know what? If you love an image, you love an image. Don't let anyone talk you out of what you feel inside for your photography. You can also hate your work too. That's not a problem. I see a lot of stuff online, especially being a Nikon ambassador, I try and contribute and help people out. And you'll read on social media people just slamming it. And it's like, hey, hold on, have a look. The framing's beautiful. They didn't have the right light, but we don't always get the right light, So, it's worth working on. So with Mad Max, George, the director, asked to have a look at some images about 3 or 4 weeks in, and because it always looks like I'm not doing anything. So he's like, oh, can I see some photos? It's like, yeah, of course, George. I said, well, I've been color grade. I've been doing a little bit of a color treatment to them, but I can send it back to normal. I hope you don't mind. He goes, no, I'd really like to have a look at what you're doing. I've heard about this actually. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So what I wanted to do when I was shooting, I had a lot of problems with dust and smoke, and the images were looking flat, and it was like doing my head in. How am I going to fix this up? So I thought, well, I can make something out of this. I've got to penetrate the dirt. So I thought, let's have a crack at a post-apocalyptic world. So the way that I treated it is I wanted the planet to age like humans. I mean, we get old, but we're not dead. We're just aging. It doesn't mean that you're ugly either. I mean, there's beauty in age. So I was using a polarizer on nearly everything. And that was because when the light allowed it, I wanted to get a little bit of grey in the sky, even if it's just this little section up here. So that was to replicate, our grey hair. And then I put some tonal contrast through it and a little bit of detail extraction, but not much. And that was because I wanted it to, tighten the skin, tighten the pores, bring out the wrinkles and stuff like that. Like we're dehydrating, the planet is dehydrated. So just really emphasize those lines and stuff like that. And then the last thing that I did was there's a little bit of the grey there. That's probably a little bit too saturated. But the last thing that I did was I put a straw, like a 3 to 7% straw through the image. And that was, that's, a yellow to those guys that don't know what I'm talking about. And that was because I wanted to show that, in my dumb head, I'm no scientist, but I think of the earth had been sucked of all its nutrients, and the last thing left was uranium and nuclear waste. And so I called it my yellow cake. And it was literally to sort of make you feel that is the dirt and the crap that's coming out of the planet. So yeah, that's my theory. It's I know it sounds a bit weird, but I like to do a little bit of a theme on my films that I work on. And this is funny because it's not a funny photo, but we were talking about it the other day with some people, and I was saying, yeah, Mad Max was insane. It was like was like this biblical Western. And then it got further into it, was like, yeah, biblical zombie Western. And, you know, I can't help thinking that George did throw the biblical and the Western part into it, especially this scene when this is the first time, for those that haven't seen Mad Max, this is the first time that they meet Max. So, yeah, there you go. What else have I got? Oh, this is a day for night image. So literally shooting at 3200 Kelvin. It's late in the afternoon, and whenever we did the day for nights, that's what we'd do. And then I've thrown some blue through it as well, you know, like what I told you I did with the straw. You know, the horizon's out on this, which normally I like to straighten up, but there's so much action going on. It's a dirty frame, and I love a dirty frame, especially when it's speaking to you. And, you know, this is probably a 24mm lens, which I don't normally shoot action on that. But if I can get in close, you know, like Robert Capa used to say, you know, if your image isn't good enough, well, then you weren't close enough. It's difficult sometimes with cast and with filmmakers to be able to have this access and be so close. But I'm lucky enough that a lot of the time I'm trusted to pull this off. And this has always been a favorite frame of mine, actually. This just gives you another example of, you know, the craziness on set. For me, you know, this is, again, 15 minutes after sundown. The only thing that was lit, obviously, was the lights here. And it's not until, you know, the stunt goes off that I get the sparks and a little bit more light. And I'm in a tracking vehicle in like a little quad and trying to shoot next to the focus puller, the first AC. And, you know, that's Nikon's, you know, the way they see in the dark and focus in the dark. And I'll get down to the D6 later and show you a frame which will just absolutely blow you away. Now, this is a classic example of waiting around. And for me, Mad Max was difficult physically and emotionally. The physical side of things I always love, because the movie itself was an incredibly good experience, and I got on fabulously with both Tom and Charlize. But a lot of the times I wouldn't be able to get a ride, and I'd sit around, you know, we'd be doing a 10-hour day, and I'd sit around for 9 hours and 55 minutes without having really shot a frame that would ever get used. Everyone was always supportive, and it's like, right, Jace, you're on. And I'd be like this little first day at school with my gear already, and I'd be jump on and harness myself onto the truck, and off we'd go. And the shot actually is, as you probably can figure, is between the two guns from the next window over. But this was the only spot that I could go to. But with the treatment that I did on it, which I did for, you know, pretty much everything, brings it out. And it's you know, it's kind of although the actual framing of the two cast members isn't that great, but I love the framing of, you know, through the doorway and stuff like that. And so it's kind of fun. But like I said, you know, I get criticised for the way I shoot it, and I get these little halos every now and again. And the way that I looked at it was that, you know, when you're underwater photography, the closer you get to the subject, the clearer it gets. And that was just how I did it. It was a dying planet, and I made it live. And this is, I always put these in. This is my poor equipment, and I put my gear through so much, and it's an absolute tribute to Nikon for their weather sealing from nearly all of the cameras, from high-level enthusiast cameras all the way through. It really blows me away. A lot of people sit there and it's like, oh, you know, how come you didn't put a cover on it? And it's like this and that. Now, I can't put a cover on it because these vehicles are doing, you know, 80 kilometres an hour, some of them further down the track, up to 100 miles an hour. But with these rigs, if I have it covered with anything and it flies off, number one, it might fly off over my lens at that speed. And number two, if it flies off into shot, I've destroyed the entire shot. So I have to really rely on my cameras to perform nude, so to speak, and just suck it up like the rest of us out on a film set. And they really do. That's me at work at Mount Rossing in Namibia. And it's I had to abseil down the cliff to climb the truss. And then if the truss is not going to fall, but if the truss fell or if something happened to me, it's 490 meters straight off the edge of the cliff. But, you know, you can see I've got 2 lock-off points. I don't do anything that's going to get myself into trouble. I've, you know, stunt team, and I have a load of people that help me out. Ooh, talking to stunt teams. Oh, any questions before I go on to Bond?
We've got a lot of questions. Great. How did you make the move between shooting news and moving into on-set stills?
Oh, well, by mistake, actually. And that's another one of my failures, because I left London. I was working in London for 3 years, and I came back to Australia, and I set up a little business with a couple of my buddies, and one of their clients had a need for on-set photographer for 4 or 5 days for a television series. And so I took it on, but I treated it like I was working for a newspaper, and I was just shooting like crew working and behind the scenes, and, you know, I had gear and everything. And I sat down with the publicist like 3 days into it or 2 days into it, and he's flicking through the book, and he's like, there's only one shot I can use here. And I'm like, oh, really? And then he's like, you know, filled me in on what he wanted. And funnily enough, that one shot was the image that they used for the entire series. But my whole film industry career nearly didn't happen at all. I've had a lot of failures before moving on. Like, you know, like I said, you know, I got kicked out of photography school within the first couple of hours. And the first film I worked on, I was a clapper loader, which I got fired from that too. And that's when I went into photography. I was already working for newspapers, and I quit newspapers to work in the film industry. And then when I got fired, I went and photographed the America's Cup in Western Australia. And then I went to Hong Kong and worked for the South China Morning Post. And then I went to Fleet Street and worked for news over there. And that's when I gave up after that. But film industry is great for me, because it was like, you know, some of the news photography that I used to have to do was a bit sus. You know, like I've had an AK shoved in my throat. It's not half as much as some of the big guys, you know, Joe and David Ed Parker and Tim Page and all that sort of stuff. But it was enough to make me question whether I wanted to do that. And the film industry, working on these big films, for me, I still get that big adrenaline rush. Did you want to ask another question before I...
Yeah, I was just going to do a follow-up question. Do you get full freedom on set, or are you expected to follow the cinematographer angle?
I think it's a bit presumptuous for me to think that I can copy the director's style and the director of photography style. And to do that exactly, you'd physically have to remove the camera. So, like I said, you know, I treat it like it's a very real environment, and I give it another set of eyes, so to speak. What I'm doing is I'm telling the story of the filmmaker's storytelling. Of course, you know, there's some key elements which, you know, I have to get. But generally now, you know, at this level, I'm hired because of what I produce on set. And, you know, I'm really lucky because I do work on action films, and I get a lot of the posters. In fact, I don't think I've ever missed out on a poster, because a lot of the time, well, still, not just a lot of the time, nearly all the time, another photographer will be flown in, like a Marco Grob or a Ramsey, and they'll do the character posters and stuff like that. But because I shoot action, 9 times out of 10, they want an action image on the poster. So it's happy days for me.
It ties into the next question. How much post-processing you do to make it look like a film rather than behind the scenes, i.e. like removing green screens and things like that?
I try and shoot clean of the green screen. A lot of the time, it's not up to me to do that. I'm the architect. The studio has a massive department and some incredibly creative minds, and I get really excited about seeing what they do with the posters. I do an edit, which I deliver every week, and 9 times out of 10, they'll be the images that get used these days. So it's teamwork. Filmmaking is collaborative. I enjoy seeing, like I said, what they do with my images, plus they enjoy me doing the select, and I do a color treatment on it. I'll match what the DP does, as in, you know, if I've thrown a little bit of a blue curve through it or something like that. But with something like Mad Max, that was all mine, and to the point that it influenced the way that the film was colored. It ended up being more saturated than what I did in the end, but, you know, through the edit suites, they had, you know, 300 or 400 of my images, so that people would walk down the corridors on their way to their edit suite, getting a little bit pumped and influenced by what I was doing.
We'll look at some more of the images. We've got 10 minutes left.
Jeez, really?
More questions. Yeah,
okay, well, I'm going to have to tell these stories, this stories later about...
follow-up with Nikon School online afterwards.
Yeah, cool. But there's a good story between these two, because this is on a rig, and this one is handheld with a 200 f2. And I've got a stuntman, Frosty, one of my buddies. I'm in a doorway and I'm hosing it down. I'm shooting off with my pocket wizard. I'm hosing it down with my 200 f2. As the car comes flying towards me, he then pulls me into this alley, into this doorway, one of these down here. And you can see there's not much room for anything to go without being absolutely to precision. So, if the car had to hit something and started falling apart, I've got someone pulling me by my sash belt and black rapid strap. This is one of my rigs down the bottom. This camera car does about 100 mile an hour, and you can see my little, I think it was a D700 or something down there, and that just stays mounted on there. And all I do is pull the card out and change the batteries, and I get shots like that. And this is from No Time to Die. This is on a camera crane. This has been used so much, this image, and then you can see it here. Yeah, that's me in the middle there with the boys, and I'm checking out that the camera's going off. So I had like 5 cameras on this scene, all with my Pocket Wizards. The thing with Pocket Wizards is, I use 8 or 10 of them. You've got to layer them around. You've got to put them up high, and especially because I'm competing with RF and a lot of metal, it's really important to, as I said, layer them and put them on relays so that they're getting it together. So, and this is my first James Bond poster, which is pretty rad. And, when I was a kid, the first movie I went to see without my mum and dad, just with my buddies, was Live and Let Die. And I know that influenced me wanting to work on James Bond films and big action films. And, I've done 3 Bonds now. And like I said, I don't do main unit, which I normally do on all my other big films, but they wanted to have a first unit action photographer shooting what we call, the action unit or second unit. And that's me for the last 3, which is pretty exciting. I hope there's many more. This is from a film called Danger Close in Australia, and it's a war film about the Battle of Long Tan. And if war films interest you, it's really worth seeing. And I had Tim Page out with me for a couple of weeks or a week. I was already channeling my inner Tim Page, so it was quite exciting. And this is a shot which is not as good as his, of course, because he's an absolute genius, but it was that sort of style that I wanted to replicate. Now, I'm into posters now. This image, obviously, is not a poster. This image is nothing remarkable. It does nothing for me, really. It's there's a bit of urgency there, but it's nothing that I would want to see published on its own. And this gives you a really good idea about the marketing department of what they do. So then they take it and they put it into a post like this, and it's quite stunning, They've taken my image and they've had an idea. Like, I would never have thought of doing that. They've done a really good job. They've done it justice, and it goes to show their eye of what they're looking at. And then we're into Ghost in the Shell. So this one is a funny story because the special photographer thought it was theirs, and I was away and I couldn't check it out. I'm like, oh, damn it. There's another one coming up too, which was like, oh, I want to claim it on Insta. And so there's 2 posters from the same image, and this will show you the green screen. So this is the image. This was in the book on the art of the Ghost in the Shell. So as you can see, I've shot it deep, so I could feel that it had poster potential when I shot it, and and there it is. That's the exact one there, and then that was I've taken the hair off, but still the same pose. So there you go. So this is another example of one of the posters that not knowing, and a lot of the time no one will let us know if it's ours. And this was from just a wardrobe test with the director. And again, I thought it could have been one of mine, but it looked pretty good, so I thought it was actually the specials photographer. All it came down to, the only way that I could claim it as mine, was you see this little highlight there? That's an overhead silk. And that was the only thing I was able to match up to my image, because it was a classic pose. I couldn't be sure whether it was someone just jagged it, and the special photographer just jagged it and got the same or not. So it's quite insane what we go through to discover which is our own images. Hemsy, him and Matt Damon are my 2 faves of all. This is from the film Extraction on Netflix, which is just insane. If you haven't seen it, you got to. And this is again, the action. Like I said, I really love a long lens, but there's something about, you use a wider lens, which I think this was probably a 50 or a 35, something like that. But it takes you inside it, and this is one of a favorite frame of mine, and all these images from now with the Z6 too, of me shooting it on set. So it's like they're beautiful, beautiful cameras. I love them. And the XQD too, you know, the card. Now this is one of my behind the scenes, and we're talking about this before, is about landscapes. Now behind the scenes images for me are my landscapes on set. And so I really enjoy doing them. I love having gear and stuff. And again, you know, I love, like I was saying, I talk about dirty frame. I like a dirty frame. I like a dirty lens. I've three 24-120s, and one of them is pristine, and then the other two have scratches. And I use the scratch ones because I love the way that they flare off the sun. So, you know, if you've got any old lenses out there that you're all upset about because you scratched it, don't be, because you can use them. And, you know, all lenses have a personality of their own, and just, you know, use that personality. This is just Chris, another behind the scenes of him just getting ready to get into the scene. And for me, I like to photo. I don't do setups. I like the director's performance, what I call the director's performance. That shot of Charlize that you saw before, you know, if I had tried to set that up, there would be no emotion. There would be half the emotion. And you can see it. As soon as cut is called, the shoulders drop and the air expires. And, you know, for me to ask them to do that again, there's nothing there. You know, they don't do it for the still photographer. They do it for the director and for you guys, the audience. And that's the important thing about being a film still photographer, is you've got to capture that performance, that raw performance. And these performances are so extraordinary that quite frequently, and I talk to my other buddies in the film industry as still photographers, you'll forget to pick up your camera sometimes because, you know, you're looking at this unbelievable raw live theatre. And it's, you know, it's a great privilege to watch this. Now, this one, I was asked a question last night, actually, and I put the extra shot in, Rishi. Someone asked me, how do you get the shots, you know, because you've got to be behind the camera and, you know, it's tricky. And, you know, you've got to seep into the cracks like water, as I say. There's a lot of dancing. You've got to feel where they're going. I shoot with both eyes open so that I can feel everything that's going on around me. And, you know, sometimes you'll have the camera swing around and I've, you know, hit the deck. This is from this scene. And then, you know, that's what you get, you know. I moved up closer, obviously, to this camera here on the right, but still not in shot. But I think it was this next shot is either just before this or just after it. Yeah, it's just after it. So that's his locked and loaded, and then he's like on the move. So yeah, that's a better example, isn't it, Rishi? To show it like that.
They work well together.
Yeah, they do. I'm going to have to keep them in together for the future. So this is another extraction again. You know, action. If you can get in there, like I said, love a long lens, but there's nothing like taking the audience inside the image. And this is the last day of Chris's work. That was with the Z6, and you know, you can just see he's beat. He's absolutely beaten, but he's still there to thank everyone. And he's, like I said, him and Matt Damon are some of the most solid guys out there. Oh, there's me. So this is what I have to dress in when all the stuff's still kicking off around me. You know, I've got, I wear leather helicopter gloves, pilot gloves for the fire. And, you know, I've got the headset that I've got, I can hear, it's amplified, so I can hear what's going on around me as well. And then when the explosion goes off or gunfire, the decibels cut it straight out. So what have I got? Oh, so this is the D6, right? If you need this camera, you need this camera. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. I did this quick little thing for Corey Creed, who's a moto rider, and he's like world champ, holds the highest record for a jump and stuff like that. Now, this is the D6 6400 ISO. I think it was like 500th of a second at f4 because I was shooting on my 200 to 400. I only shot it on the 200 to 400 because I wasn't sure whether I'd have to pull the zoom out. But it tracked the focus from the dark all the way through onto the water here. And I shoot skateboarding with it. I shoot everything with it. The thing that blows me away is with the D6 is backtracking. So, you know, not the tracking of the focus coming towards you, but the focus going away. Now, I've always found that super tricky with any DSLR, and the D6 with the Xpeed 6 processor seems to me to really punch it, and it's such a great camera to use. Oh my gosh. A little bit of craziness going on there. I love a bit of craziness. And a little bit of fun too. And then he loves that. That's kind of cool. And then we're on to Mulan, which is one of the most beautiful films I've ever been able to photograph in my life. The director of photography, Mandy Walker, and the director, Nikki Caro. Oh, it was just every day was like this. And this gives you another example of posters and how they can change them. There's like 5 different versions of this, or 4 different versions of this poster, all taken from this sequence from the battle scene. And when I photographed it, we only shot it for half a day. And I was like, I thought it was going to be weeks. And so it was insane to get so many images from it. And Ife Lu, our actress, she can do anything. She rides horses, she does martial arts. She's an incredible actress. And beautiful to photograph too. And there she is. I sat around waiting for this shot all day because we're doing cross shooting, and I wanted this shot of her staring into a horse's eyes, and we didn't shoot that on the film. So this example of what, the question you asked before is, you got to look for different angles. You got to look for something which is, my audience is different. I've got to sell an image in a single frame as opposed to a minute long scene. So, and then I'll finish off with Charlize Theron from Aeon Flux, and this was, anyone that knows the anime or the manga, it's when she's looking straight up and she catches a fly in her lashes, and we're making a camera adjustment, and she just leaned over and started having a chat to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just stay there. I think this is like a D2X or something like that. And you can see it's a little bit noisy from those days. I would love to get a D850 or a Z6 or Z7 onto this, but it is what it is, and it's still I think, relatively classic Hollywood image of an incredible artist. And there you go. And talking of artists, I don't look at myself as being an artist. I've never thought of myself as being an artist. I'm a storyteller. My style is real, raw and dirty, and I have fun. And you guys should have fun with your photography as well. And these turbo talks, I never get to cover everything, but believe in yourself. You can be the photographer that you dream to be. I became the photographer that I never believed existed. So just don't give up. You can all be better than what I am, I promise you.
Cheers for that, Jason. I find the images just amazing. Some of my favourite films in there. You seem to have sort of got the genre of films that I just love, from the sort of Aeon Flux and Ghost in the Shell and all that. Do people come to you for your work, or do you have to find a contact to show a portfolio to? My last 7 or 8 new clients have all come from Instagram. I've got a website. Don't bother to go to it. It hasn't been updated for years. If you want to see any relevant and latest work, it's all on Instagram. I think people understand now that the quality's there. And, Insta's pretty important, and you got to do it right. I think, you have a personal page, and then you have a work page, and don't put your food photos on your work page and all your selfies and stuff like that. Keep it on point. And it'd be great if you guys could come and follow me on my Insta. And I'm always open to questions too. So if you message me there, I'll always get back to you. And whether it's, a direct answer or direct you to my YouTube channel, whatever. Next question. Has sort of, with all the speed involved, you talked about the James Bond there being pulled back into the alleyway. Do you ever feel in danger?
No, never. It's all planned out. We spend hours, not necessarily hours, but it might be tens of minutes. It could be an hour of planning. The thing about photography, the thing about anything in life is you've got to have an exit. So I've always got an exit. I've always got an exit planned. If I don't feel safe, I'll have someone pull me out. There's times also where I'll be the only one that's allowed to be in a spot, but I'll be somewhere which I can jump behind. I mean, a massive rock or something like that. You never stand in front of something that you can get pinned to. You got to be smart. You want to get home to your family, and always have an exit.
Good question here coming. Has your enthusiasm got the better of you? You've got into trouble with a director or an actor?
No, I'm quite quiet on set. I will greet an actor with a nice little greeting, and I don't really talk too much, especially on set, but, you know, away from set, you know, you have a relationship, you're all friends and family while you're away. But it's, you know, I have a great deal of respect for cast, and it's hard. It's a job like anything else. And, you know, I've seen them get 5-6 pages of new dialogue and have to learn it in half an hour. And that's an absolutely incredible skill. And like I said, you know, I love the filmmaking process, so I love watching them work. And sometimes they like watching me work.
Final question, do you work for the movie studio or do you freelance and then sell your images to them? If you do work for the studio, do they own the images?
If they didn't own the images, I would have retired after Matrix. So, no, I don't own any of it. We get paid really well, and, you know, the buyout is taken into the factor there. If we do a poster, you get a buyout on that as well. So no, I don't own anything. I'm hired. I can be hired by the studio, the director, and actor. You know, if you come as a request, things sail through. But I also pitch as well, because there's projects that I want to do, and I'll put my name forward. I have an agent, Barbara Lakin in LA, and, you know, she keeps my name in circulation, and I thank her greatly for that.
Cool. Thank you so much. We've gone 10 minutes over.
I'm sorry.
So much. No, I find it fascinating. Sort of listening to you talk. We'll definitely catch up again, do another Nikon School thing. We just got another couple of exhibitions and stuff to get out the way first, and I'll definitely be in touch. And we'll, if you register for the Nikon School newsletter, guys, we'll have Jason back on one of our online talks. We go for 2 hours on those talks, so we can get a bit more detailed look at, because there's loads of movies you've shot that we've just not covered here, is there?
No.
Tons and tons of images on there. I hope you enjoyed that, and sort of little insight into what it's like shooting Hollywood blockbuster movies, and working behind the scenes on set there. Thank you so much, Jason, for your time. I know it's your evening. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. See you soon on a Nikon School course. I'll be in touch, Jason. Thanks so much. Enjoy your evening.
Well, team, I hope you enjoyed that little insight into, well, me. And I've got a longer one that I shot with Nikon Australia. I'm going to put that up in a bit, but at the moment, this is a little turbo talk, so I thought you might enjoy it all in one sitting. And there you go. If you can, give me a little bit of a subscribe. That'd be great. And do the bell so that you can be notified next time I'm on, or any of my other photographer pals are on. Okay, have a great day. Cheers.